Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. So today I have some recommendations for you. That are all about like caretaking or sickbed scenes specifically. So these are all romances where there is some situation in this book that happens where either one person in the couple either gets sick or they get injured or something happens where they are, oh, he's being so loud, where they are just taken to their bed and they have to stay there until they recover. So this is a little bit different than like a chronic illness or a mental illness type of thing. This is really just someone falls sick and then they end up getting taken care of. So I really love this trope, and I recently read a few books that had this trope in it, and I realized that this is something that I really, really love in my romances, and I love it for a couple of reasons. So something that I think makes this super appealing to me is that it almost always is really, sometimes it happens at the beginning, and that's either the catalyst for them getting together or seeing that they might have feelings for each other when they witness the person that they love and care about be in mortal peril or really not feel good. It tends to break down walls and allow them to really admit that they have feelings for this person, and I love that so much. But I also feel like it really can help that person to sort of level up and realize that maybe if they've been on the fence about if they want to be with this person or if they want to make that commitment, it can be the event that makes them realize that yes, I want to be with this person. And I feel like especially if whatever illness or injury has happened, if it's like one that's really a grave peril, like that can be so dramatic and just so good. But it's also just really fun to see the hero and heroine just be so sweet and attentive and loving when the person that they are bonkers for is hurt or sick, and I just love that. I love that so much. So I have some recommendations in here, and all of these books have what I think is a really excellent sickbed caretaking scene. And I'm not going to talk about what the scene is because that would spoil things in the plot, so I'm just going to give you the basic plot of the book, and if you are interested in a caretaking trope and the premise of the book sounds interesting, then I would definitely recommend you pick it up, because inevitably in every single one of these books that I read, that was the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I love this book so much. Look how they're taking care of each other. It's just so, so great. I love it. I love it. I love it dearly. So the first book that I want to talk about, and one that I feel like everyone who reads romance, and especially historical romance, is probably going to know. It's very well known for this. It's actually a part of the plot, so I can tell you what this is about, and it is Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. This is one of my favorite historical romances ever, and specifically it's one of them because of the caretaking scene in this. It is so beautiful, and I could have read a 600-page book of just the caretaking scene alone. So Hester has escaped slavery, and she has indigo-stained palms because she used to work in the indigo fields. And she is working now for the Underground Railroad, and one day she is alerted to a new mission where she is to take care of and nurse back to health the Black Daniel, who is a major player in the Underground Railroad movement. His name is Galen, and he's been very gravely injured, and they have to keep him hidden, and Hester ends up caring for him at great personal risk to herself. This is where they first meet in the opening scene, is when she is taking care of him because he is so injured. And from the minute that they meet, they have this very powerful and very spark-filled attraction, and they have a lot of moments when they're just together and when she's taking care of him, where they can really talk and sort of get to know each other. There's a lot of fun flirtation that's happening there, and this book is just so wonderfully romantic and beautifully historical, and I loved it very much, and the sickbed scene is iconic. It's perfect. Okay, the next book I want to recommend is actually the most recent book that I read with this trope that literally made me almost just cry and my heart grew 10 sizes. It was so beautifully done, and that is The Ruin of a Rake by Cat Sebastian. This is an historical romance, and this follows Julian and Courtney. Now, Courtney is a lord in the peerage, and he has sort of run across some scandal in his life, and he's definitely lost favor with the ton and the peerage at that time, and he is not able to see his nephew. His sister has passed away, and one thing he dearly wants is to be able to see his nephew, but his reputation prevents that from happening. Julian is not a member of the peerage. He is sort of a self-made man, and he is very well respected by the ton, and he ends up intervening on Courtney's behalf because of Julian's sister to try and help Courtney regain a place in society so that he can have his relationship with his nephew again. It was so beautiful. These two were such, as Kelly likes to say, they were two idiots in love. Like, honestly, it was so beautiful watching them very slowly fall for one another. There was a lot of like guarded moments. There was a lot of really some vulnerable moments where they were trusting one another and being afraid to trust and hurt. You have the whole issue of what it would be like to admit those feelings in a historical time period for same-sex attraction, and it was honestly really just so beautiful. And the sickbed scene in this, it did it for me. Like, I think I reread the sickbed scene like 10 times. It also involves kittens, so if that doesn't sell you on this book, this is one of my favorite MM romances, and I believe this is the only historical MM that I have read so far, and it was fabulous. I highly recommend this book. It was perfection. I loved it so much. Okay, the next book that I have to recommend for you is Mine Till Midnight by Lisa Kleypas. Now, Lisa Kleypas is definitely a fan of having sickbed scenes or caretaking scenes in her romances, and this one actually is a little bit interesting in that it takes up a large part of the plot, but I don't want to spoil it. I will tell you because I don't feel like this is a spoiler. It's not involving the main love interest. It's sort of the side plot who you get to see get their book in the future. So this book follows Cam, Rohan, and Amelia. Amelia and her family have recently inherited some money. She's raising her siblings on her own. Her parents have passed away. And her brother is living a life of just a lot of debauchery and really going in a dark, bad place, and she's afraid for him and for her family. She ends up meeting Cam Rohan, who is a Romani man, and he's another self-made man, very successful, and he decides to help on her behalf to find her brother and bring him home. They end up having a very passionate, beautiful romance. I love this book so much. It's one of my favorite Lisa Kleypas, and the sickbed scene in here, it was so much, like, there was so much angst and longing, and you have those very unguarded moments of being vulnerable about this person that you have so many feelings about. That, and that's another thing that I so love about this trope, is that people, the couple, the love interest, they'll often say things that they wouldn't have said otherwise because they're feeling so vulnerable and so soft towards this person, and I love it so much. I dearly loved the sickbed scene in this. It was perfect. Okay, and the next book that I have to recommend is one of my favorite books of all time, and that is Brazen and the Beast by Sarah MacLean. The sickbed scene in here is so beautiful and so powerful and so angsty, and it's just fantastic. This one involves the hero watching the heroine who has fallen sick, and he has a lot of feelings that he's been repressing, and oh my goodness, it's just so beautiful. So this book follows Hattie, who is she's approaching spinsterhood, and she's realizing that she doesn't want to live the rest of her life without having a way to live her own life and to do the things she wants to do. So she decides to have 1 year where she just does whatever she wants, and one of the things she wants to do is to lose her virginity. So she ends up meeting Beast, the Beast who is part of the Bare Knuckle Bastards. He is this force in Covent Garden, and everyone is afraid of him. He is a fierce fighter, and he is a grunty, growly, wonderful hero. This is one of my favorite romances of all time. There's so much longing and just so much passion and so much love, and Hattie ends up requesting that he be the one to help her in her year of self-discovery. So they definitely have a lot of feelings for one another, and Wit, Beast, very, very much wants to make sure that he is the only one to do that for Hattie, and the sickbed scene, man, it was a good one. I loved it. Okay, and I have another Lisa Kleypas book because I adored the sickbed scene in here. It just was so good, and it is Secrets of a Summer Night. This is the first book in her Wallflower series, and this book is about Simon and Annabelle. Annabelle is a She's a young lady. She's been out for several seasons. She's very beautiful, but she has not been able to secure a successful match because her family really is poor and they do not have a dowry for her. And so she's desperately trying to find a successful marriage to save her family from financial ruin. Simon is another self-made hero. He is a self-made man. I believe he's actually from America, maybe? I can't remember if he is or not. And he has his sights set on Annabelle because he just thinks she is the most stunning woman that he has ever seen, and he is determined to win her. They end up staying somewhere together, and they have a lot of interactions towards one another, and the heroine falls sick, and the hero is Simon is so concerned with her, and he's so worried about her, and he just is so, like, he's so precious with her. Like, he carries her and he like just calls her these beautifully lovely endearments, and we get to see this man who she kind of has had a very big attraction with, but hasn't really been sure that the feelings he has for her have been anything more than lust. And when she falls sick and he starts to feel really worried, like, that's the point when you see their relationship start to change. And it was so good. I loved it so much. It was one of my favorite sickbed scenes, and just specifically because of how the hero was just so tender and so concerned with her. I loved it so freaking much. And another book that I read recently that had a wonderfully swoony sickbed scene is Love at First by Kate Claiborne. That actually has just recently released. This is a contemporary romance, and this follows Will and Nora. Will and Nora met when Will was 15. They met but didn't really know each other when Will comes to an apartment complex where his uncle lives because his mother was trying to get some help from her brother, who she's sort of been estranged with. It's a very tense situation, and Will ends up waiting outside where he sees Nora in an apartment above, yelling and shouting at squirrels and throwing cherry tomatoes at them, and one of them ends up hitting Will. This book was so heartfelt. It was beautiful. This is one of my favorite contemporary romances. It was absolutely perfect in the way that it was executed towards building up this relationship very slowly. It had moments of levity and humor and fun. It had a beautifully warm found family aspect for all the people that lived in the apartment, who were mostly older people. It was so good. And the sickbed scene in here, again, this was another moment where this couple, they're like sort of circling each other. They've got all these attraction and they've got all these feelings, but they don't know what to do with them because they're worried. Like, is the other person going to return them, or are they going to feel the same way about me? Or what if I put myself out there and I get hurt? You know, like all of those things that they're feeling before they decide to go for it. And then one of them falls sick, and that's when they're like, I need this person. Nothing can happen to my most precious one, you know? It's just done so well, and I loved it so much. Okay, and another book that I want to recommend is another one that I've read recently, and this is actually the second book in this series, so I wasn't sure if I was going to include it because you do have to read the first one. But again, this is another one where the sickbed scene just hit me, and it was like everything that I wanted in a sickbed scene. It was so beautiful. There was so much tenderness and so much concern, and there was that vulnerability element where they both, like, they were kind of not communicating and not sharing, and then they had that moment where they were sick and the walls fall down and they're able to communicate. It's just so perfect. I just love it so much. Anyway, let me tell you what the book is. It's Down to My Soul by Kennedy Ryan. This is the second book. I believe this is the Soul series. So this is one of her older series. This is, I guess, I don't know that this is necessarily a prequel series because you don't need to read this before you read the Grip series, which if you've been watching my videos, you know I freaking love. But this book features the heroine's book from Grip. Her brother is the hero in here, and it's the story of how he meets and falls in love with his wife, who you see in the Grip trilogy. They're both musicians. They're both like really hard workers. Kai, the heroine, is she's a musician, a dancer, and she wants to be an actress, and she is really, really striving to make a career for herself and build a name for herself that's not dependent upon Ryson, the hero, who is basically a phenomenon. He's extremely worldwide successful musician. Like, everybody knows his name. He can't go out in public, you know, and she doesn't want to be successful just because she is with him. So she's working super hard to try and make that happen, and she ends up falling sick, and the concern and the tenderness and the protectiveness, like, I am a sucker for a protective hero. And that is exactly what was here. It was just, it was so beautiful. I love when the couple one of them gets sick. And then they have to be like, my precious one is sick and I can't let them die. And they're worried that something's gonna happen, and then they feel like they just have to share all their feelings, and they have this great connection. It's just so perfect. I love this trope. I am a complete sucker for it. So, now, another book that I have is very, very popular, and I feel like people who don't even read romance have read and know what this book is, but I'm still going to mention it just in the off chance that maybe somebody out there hasn't read it, and that is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This book is another contemporary romance. This is an enemies to lovers. If you look on any enemies to lovers list, you're going to see this one there, but maybe you didn't know that it also features a sickbed scene. I mean, if you haven't read it, if you've read it, then you know. But this book follows Lucy and Josh, who are, I guess they're assistants to two different bosses in this publishing industry, and they're both kind of trying to get ahead and so that their career is better than the other. I'm doing a very bad job of explaining this. It's an enemies to lovers office romance, and it's very good. I really liked it. The sickbed scene was really great. So this is a fun one. I feel like this is a very light, very fun, I mean, I laughed out loud when I was reading it. It was a good time. So if you haven't read this, I would definitely recommend checking it out, because it has a wonderful sickbed scene, and also I believe they're making a movie of it. So that will be fun. Okay, and the next book that I want to recommend is actually one that I didn't love completely. I have changed my rating on this. I originally rated it 2 stars. After thinking it over, I really felt like I was probably a little too harsh, because it did have some elements that really did work for me, and one of them in specifically was the sickbed scene, and that is Hunting for a Highlander by Lindsay Sands. So this book is very funny. It is very... I've heard it often referred to as campy, and I would say that it has the feeling of a 90s sitcom with a laugh track. That's what it reminds me of. Like, it has a lot of silliness, a lot of antics like that happen, you know, like there are a lot of things that are maybe a little over the top, but it can also be really fun in that way too. And I think that Lindsay Sands really did a good job of creating a very fast-paced, moving story. And the sickbed scene in here, I don't want to specifically talk about it, but that was the one scene in here that I really, really loved. And it was specifically because the heroine was ill, and the hero, who really already was very much gone for her, this was the thing where he just brought, like, he's this big Highlander guy, and he really wants this woman anyway. He's very much attracted to her, but when he sees her sick, like, all of his tenderness and protectiveness comes out, and it's really, really fun to watch that. So if you like Highlander romances, if you want something that's very lighthearted and doesn't take itself seriously at all, that has pretty much zero angst and is just a fun, lighthearted read that is also very sexy and has a great sickbed scene, then I would recommend checking this out, because, like I said, like, that is the one thing that I remember just being like, oh, I love it. Maybe I do really like this book. So those are my recommendations for some of my favorite sickbed scenes in romance books. I don't really know how I'm going to title this video. Because it's not really like a caretaking, but sickbed scene, that sounds a little, I don't know. I guess you'll see. Anyway, let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, and if you have a book that has a great caretaking sickbed scene, please let me know what that is, because I need them. I need them all. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in my next one.